In the name of one God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Amen. It's a very familiar story, how Jesus went to his friend's house in Bethany, and how one sister sat and listened to him, but the other was too busy to pay attention. If you didn't know Jesus, you might even hear some shaming of Martha in the intonation that's been applied to his words. Martha, Martha, why so distracted? Mary is doing the better thing. Why can't you be more like your sister? But Jesus is not shaming Martha. He's trying to set her free, as he has set her sister free. In first century Palestine, like much of the world even today, women's roles were very narrowly defined. If guests were in the house, the women were expected to wait on the men hand and foot, certainly not to join them in listening to the rabbi, as Mary did. Women who dared to enter the realm of men were shamed, ostracized, and shunned. But in a reversal of these norms, Jesus instead commends Mary for her chutzpah. She is accepted as a disciple. Whenever we read or study a Bible passage, it helps to put it in its context. Jesus had stopped off at his friend's house on his way to Jerusalem. We heard it said that he had set his face towards Jerusalem. He knew what was going to happen there, and it didn't take his divine nature to come to that conclusion. For 3 years, Jesus had been angering the powers that be. He challenged unjust laws. He was vocal about the cruelty of rulers such as Herod. He pushed back against the religious leaders who hurt the poor and the marginalized. He called them hypocrites for saying one thing and yet doing another. None of these things had endeared Jesus to the powerful. He knew his actions would get him labeled as a troublemaker, and that troublemakers were routinely tortured and put to death. He knew he didn't have much time. So it's with a sense of urgency that Jesus is teaching his followers and their guests in that little house in Bethany about the kingdom of God and the good news of God's love for all people. He wants them to really grasp his message before he is gone. Now, Martha is a good person. She wants to live up to the expectations that have been placed on her. She wants to do the right thing. In her time, hospitality was not just a virtue. It could be a matter of life and death. Providing shelter, food, and drink to those who came to your door, whether you knew them or not, was of the greatest importance. There were no Super 8 motels or fast food places along the way. But for Jesus, in this critical moment of his life, the hospitality that he most desires from his friend is for her to listen to him. Hosting a flawless dinner party is not the most important thing that Martha can be doing at this moment. Joining Jesus for a moment of rest, refreshment, and inspiration is what she needs most, too. There's so much for us to be doing right now. Much of it is urgent. The needs around us are so great. We dare not fail to do our duty to those whom we are called to serve. Whether it's keeping ourselves and our families together, body and soul, balancing the demands of jobs, household, and doing our bit for the greater good. It can seem that there are several places, several directions, demanding our attention all at once. Several places that could use each dollar coming in, and more work that could ever be completed in one day. The famous Christian reformer Martin Luther was continually besieged by his detractors. You'll remember that he had challenged the authority of the papacy by declaring that all baptized persons share in a spiritual priesthood. He had so stirred things up that he was declared an outlaw of the state and had to publicly defend himself at the famous Diet of Worms. And yet, in the midst of his tremendous anxiety and trouble, he said, "I am so busy that I shall spend the first 3 hours in prayer." Now, I'm not necessarily advocating that we each spend 3 hours in prayer every morning. Though if you can, and if you do, awesome. Keep on. But 10 to 20 minutes a day is a really good start. We can gain valuable perspective on all the choices and problems that we face if we first spend time sitting at Jesus' feet, listening to and absorbing his teachings. Listen to his invitation. "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden. You will find rest for your souls." Or from the Psalms, "Be still and know that I am God." Just as Jesus gave Martha permission to let go of the standards that she had set for herself and the expectations that society had placed on her, consider that you yourselves have been given that same freedom to choose your priorities in life. What is it that God has placed on your heart? If you're not sure, go and sit with Jesus for a little while longer. Talk it over with your fellow disciples in a spirit of prayer. God has good things in mind for you. You are worthy of a meaningful and purposeful life, which begins anew each day when we sit at Jesus' feet. Amen.
Amen.